Spear in the Sand, a novel.
Prologue. A juggler of 3 or 4 lit torches chatted with a silk-veiled angelic being, as she floated with an entourage of a dozen slave girls and 5 eunuchs, fanning her procession along the carpeted hall, as filtered light obscured them all in blues, reds, and greens. Above her, a pair of boys sat in the branches overlooking the courtyard and its laughter, profanity, and eruptions. Here a group of girls painting the arched doorway to the third-floor prayer hall. There, a quartet of boys playing with real armor and real swords, oblivious to the crying children opposite the hall. These were the kinds of apparitions that greeted a young man who exited his bedroom to search for his brother, leaving Luck alone to guard his infant son and young wife in the high-ceiling room ambushed by noon light, attacking 2 large windows comprising one corner of the palace. In the first month of the new campaign, the Caliph himself and his entire cadre of lieutenants had embarked on a giant eastward march to rout the rebels once and for all, and teams of caretakers invaded the empty rooms to finally attempt a cleaning that had eluded the continuously bustling center of Umayyad government. But now, in the second month, the elder children left behind, and some of the bolder slaves, and now even the little children had populated the rooms whose usually fortified doors were left open due to a number of undefined pranks of a dark nature. Ivory elephants, the once manicured guardians of a princess's dining room, now popped up in strange places. The sounds of excessive calls to "get down from there" and "shut up" started commingling with the faint traces of carnal enjoyment behind massive doors somehow locked for the afternoon. The call to prayer from the nearby Grand Mosque largely went unheeded, except by a diligent few who entered into a state of reverie to defy the odds and make a path through the juvenile mayhem to the palace mosque. One dared not leave the palace for fear of returning to a ransacked apartment. But again, the call to prayer had been made, and the wandering young father sought his male sibling to at least ensure some framework for these parentless days in the palace. He also had 3 female siblings, but they had taken over an atrium for several weeks and had faithfully conducted teams of slaves in the establishment of a set of games and a show. Yahya was not there, the sisters told him. He checked the music room where 20 or 30 young men with half-sleeping women nestled on each arm had gathered to listen to the singing of 5 Roman beauties, whose hair appeared as silky as their voices. No brother planted in the seats adorning the perimeter here. The call entered its final phase, and then the farther mosques began theirs, as if given permission by the elder minaret at the heart of Damascus. Abdurrahman searched rooms all along the second floor, asking 2 young cousins, and even checking the second-floor mosque itself, to see if Yahya was actually sitting there, early for the noon prayer. No sibling, only cousins, slaves, freedmen, and freedwomen, and the gardeners and caretakers of the palace repeating, "Come to prayer," in loud, bored voices. There was a whole city outside the palace walls. A voice asked, "Looking for your brother?" The checkered shadow of the 4th-floor balcony latticework that fell here on the 2nd floor concealed her veiled form, but she was unmistakable. Abdur Rahman's first love, whom he could not marry because his current wife became pregnant, and the time was never right again. Even as a second wife, tilted her head so as to dislodge her silhouette from the small sun diamonds stationed across her body. "Maimuna," he said. looking at her and then down the hallway. This has got to stop. Us running into each other while your family is scattered all about. No, this irresponsibility. Women need to do something. We are watching everyone. I am watching you. You outnumber us now. Watching is enough? Watching is plenty. Your brother passed the masjid a while ago. He was with some older boys. Your half-brothers, I think. Trying to be like them? Again? There was some commotion. It seemed like someone had arrived back, finally. Go check it out. One could hear her smile as she tossed out the command. She remained in the shadow just a few feet away. After you pray, of course. I gave you money. Did you buy their freedom? Asked the prince. I bought the freedom of 69 slaves, my love. He looked at her firmly. We cannot be together yet. 99 slaves. You promised. Abdurrahman broke away and entered the mosque, washed, and found that he was one of a handful of boys who were attending prayer in a room built for 100. He led the prayer. More boys and men accrued after he began, but he sensed them behind him through the shuffle of feet, and sighing invocations breathed in the watery silence of noon, defended against the buzz of chaos by thick walls. Some boys laughed in the middle of prayer, then were quiet for a time. Then others giggled from the opposite end of the row, but farther back. When he looked back after the prayer, he saw his brother in the last row, farthest from him, closest to the exit, get up and leave hurriedly with two lanky men. Satisfied with the sight of Yahya at prayer, technically speaking, Abdurrahman chose not to pursue his little brother once exiting the prayer area. Meandering in the opposite direction, back to his bedroom where wife and son were entrenched in blankets and variants of peekaboo, the prince with auburn hair wondered at the return of the caliph and an end to this 2-year conflict. His curiosity was loose as he walked by girls in oversized wedding gowns, large tomes left open with the pages lifting with the pull of an invisible reader, and orange cats too familiar with human traffic to suffer intimidation by his size. But he mustn't think too much. How much booty will this long war yield? When will I see my father again? Will some relatives not return? Will the fighting impact the holy pilgrimage to Mecca this year? Why are cherries so sweet? He dodged a juggler's flaming torch and was at once looking out a window, hands on rails, and saw below a gathering of golden men chanting in unison. His brother was down there, at the marble esplanade, where large stripes of dark green and light green reflected the golden sheen in a translucent dream interspersed with the oxymoron of martial death. The eldest boys of the palace had been called up as reinforcements, but not him, and not Yahya. You and your brother stay back. Their cousin laughed out in a voice that at this altitude came like a tiny noise. Uncle Muawiyah's children from his African concubine are no place for the caliph's cadet army. Take care of the women for us. Yahya, wearing golden armor and looking as ferocious as them, though only 2/3 their size, gave an automatic and stupid smile. The horsemen left in waves as the esplanade gave way to the portcullis that opened to an avenue flanked by pistachio trees as far as the eye could see before the gray rim of the city walls.